Did you know Hitler's darkest deputy wasn't a general or a politician? He wasn't a general leading armies, nor a politician giving fiery speeches. He seemed quiet, disciplined, and rather unremarkable. Yet behind that mild appearance hid one of the 20th century's most ruthless figures. If you wanted to know Hitler's thoughts, you watched what Himmler did. Nobody understood or acted on Hitler's racial policies with more accuracy. As Reichsführer SS, Himmler laid the groundwork for Nazi terror. He reshaped Germany from within and spread genocide across Europe. Before the war, he built the SS as a state within a state. It had its own ideology, police, and concentration camps. During the war, he planned the Holocaust. He oversaw slave labor and executed Hitler's darkest plans. If Hitler had the vision, Himmler made it a systematic, merciless reality. This seemingly weak man was actually one of the strongest architects of a racial nightmare. Heinrich Himmler was born October 7, 1900, in Munich. His conservative Catholic family nurtured him strictly. Physically frail and shy, he never became the soldier he wished for. But he was obsessed with duty, order, and German nationalism. In the 1920s, after studying agriculture, Himmler joined the Nazi Party. He quickly became enthralled by Hitler's vision of racial purity and expansion. More than anything, he craved order and ideological clarity. This obsession defined his rise to power. By the time war started in 1939, Himmler had already deeply changed Germany. His responsibilities before World War II laid the foundation for genocide. When Himmler took over the SS in 1929, it had fewer than 300 members. Over the next decade, he built it into a vast organization. By 1939, it boasted over 250,000 men. He insisted on strict racial requirements, demanding proof of Aryan ancestry. He trained the SS as an ideological elite, fanatically loyal to Hitler. He presented the SS as guardians of Germany's racial destiny. By 1939, the SS was not just paramilitary, but a state within a state controlled by Himmler. The SS had huge tentacles reaching out into Germany. And Himmler was their chief. One of Himmler's first acts of power was establishing Dachau in March 1933. It was the first Nazi concentration camp. Initially for political enemies, communists, socialists, and trade unionists, Dachau became a training ground for SS guards. It was the model for the entire camp system. By the eve of World War II, camps like Sachsenhausen and Buchenwald were already imprisoning Jews, Roma, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, and political dissidents. Himmler personally oversaw their expansion, ensuring SS control over detention. In 1934, after the Night of the Long Knives, Himmler seized control of the Gestapo. By 1936, all German police forces were unified under SS authority. The Gestapo monitored, arrested, and terrorized opponents. The SS Intelligence Service, the SD, spied on citizens and occupied populations. Protective detention allowed the Gestapo, the secret state police, to take individuals without any offense committed. In 1939, Himmler merged the Gestapo, Kripo, and SD into one office. This created an unprecedented surveillance state. Himmler was also deeply involved in enforcing Nazi racial ideology before the war. He helped implement the Nuremberg Laws of 1935. These stripped Jews of citizenship and banned marriage or sexual relations between Jews and Aryans. In newly annexed Austria and Czechoslovakia, Himmler experimented with Germanization policies. He deported local populations and resettled ethnic Germans. These early actions hinted at mass deportations and genocidal colonization in Eastern Europe. When Hitler invaded Poland in September 1939, Himmler's empire of terror expanded dramatically. Over the next 6 years, he became one of Europe's most powerful men. He was responsible for crimes on a scale never seen before. Poland became the first area for his racial reordering vision. Mass executions followed, targeting priests, teachers, and intellectuals. This was an effort to cripple Polish society. Himmler also created sealed ghettos where Jews were confined under SS authority, deprived of food and medicine, the first step to extermination. Through Germanization, Himmler oversaw the deportation of Poles and Jews to make room for German settlers. Children deemed racially suitable were kidnapped and raised as Germans. In 1939 Poland, Himmler started policies that would be scaled up in the East. The invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941 was a turning point. Operation Barbarossa was an ideological war of annihilation. Himmler was at its center, directing mobile killing squads known as the Einsatzgruppen. They followed the Wehrmacht and massacred Jews, communists, Roma, and others. By the end of 1941, over 1 million Jews had been killed in mass shootings. He enforced the Commissar Order, ensuring Soviet political officers were executed on capture. This denied them any rights as prisoners of war. Himmler supported a plan to starve tens of millions of Soviet civilians. This was so German soldiers and civilians could be fed. Entire cities like Leningrad were deliberately left to starve. Himmler was a chief architect of General Plan Ost. This was the SS blueprint for reshaping Eastern Europe. Up to 50 million Slavs were to be expelled, enslaved, or exterminated. This led to the biggest mass death in the German sphere of influence in 1941. 2.2 million died, and about 3.3 million Soviet prisoners of war perished in German captivity. Ukraine's fertile farmland was meant to be a German breadbasket. Major cities like Moscow and Leningrad were slated for destruction. German settlers would replace them, building a new racial empire. Though never fully realized due to Germany's defeat, Himmler pursued its logic relentlessly. He implemented starvation, deportation, and colonization policies across occupied territories. Himmler's most infamous role was overseeing the Holocaust. By late 1941, the killing shifted from shootings to industrialized extermination. Under his authority, death camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau were built and operated. At the Wannsee Conference in January 1942, Reinhard Heydrich, Himmler's deputy, coordinated the final solution with senior Nazi officials. Himmler personally visited camps, inspecting gas chambers. Millions were murdered under his control. Millions were murdered, but Himmler saw it as a solemn duty. This was to be executed with extreme resolve for the future of the Reich. Himmler also controlled the massive forced labor network that powered Germany's war efforts. Numerous Soviet POWs and individuals from conquered territories were brought to Germany. Those in concentration camps endured grueling labor for corporations like IG Farben. The circumstances were intentionally harsh. Insufficient food, illness, and physical abuse led to extremely high fatality rates. Following the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, his prominent SS second-in-command, the SS annihilated the Czech village of Lidice, executing the men and deporting the women and children. By the years 1943 and 1944, Himmler was at the peak of his authority. However, as Germany began to lose the war, his influence started to diminish. Hitler became increasingly doubtful of him, while Martin Bormann strengthened his position as the Führer's closest associate. In 1945, as Germany crumbled, Himmler attempted clandestine negotiations with the Western Allies, hoping to salvage his own situation and possibly secure a role as Hitler's successor. Upon discovering this disloyalty, Hitler removed Himmler from all his posts on April 28. The world saw the downfall of Himmler, the most devoted follower, whom he had always depended upon so heavily that he felt betrayed, as he stated. Nevertheless, this action, occurring merely 2 days prior to Hitler's own demise, held more symbolic weight than actual consequence. It was a final outburst of rage within a regime already collapsing. Apprehended by the British in May 1945, Himmler took his own life using cyanide, thus avoiding prosecution at Nuremberg. Heinrich Himmler profoundly shaped Nazi Germany through his organizational skills, his ideology, and sheer ruthlessness. Prior to the war, he developed the SS into an elite racial force, established the network of camps, and created a state of pervasive surveillance. Throughout the war, he was instrumental in the Holocaust, managed the mass starvation of millions under the Hunger Plan, and implemented the colonization plans of General Plan Ost. He subjugated entire populations, directed the Einsatzgruppen mass shootings, and suppressed all opposition with unrelenting force. Himmler wasn't merely carrying out orders. He was a primary force behind transforming the Nazi regime into a machine of mass extermination. His enduring impact illustrates how malevolence can manifest as a bureaucratic system, impersonal, systematic, and devoid of emotion, demonstrating that even an ordinary individual can orchestrate destruction on a scale that continues to affect humanity profoundly. He was